Cook certainly had a great season, would have had a lot more had he stayed healthy. Odell Beckham, unreal, off the charts when you consider that he missed time. And there were 5 wide receivers taken in the first round a year ago, 0 running backs. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLA.com with that. The NFL Scouting Combine going on in Indianapolis. It's been freezing there, below freezing, miserable. Of course, they're indoors. That's good. Some people say move the thing south, but I don't think that's going to happen. And with regard to what's transpired there, look, it's the underwear Olympics, okay? If you get excited about guys being in shorts and T-shirts, it's all good. There's some things to like, other things ignore. You have enough of a sample size to evaluate. That said, Amy, when you look at what's going on at the Combine, they do pay attention to guys who can run like the wind and jump out the building, right?
And I've said it, the one thing about the Combine is that it's truly identifying who the outstanding athletes are, not necessarily the position players. You're looking at the guys that are athletes. But I'm going to say, I agree with Ricky and what he has been saying since we started talking about the draft, that that's not going to tell you what a guy does when he's got to have that 3 and 4 yard burst. You know, you're not going to get that at the Combine, but if you're looking, as you said, that pure display of absolute athleticism, the Combine is your sport.
Sometimes the numbers lie, sometimes they don't. Okay, let's take a look now at some of the 40 times, because this is what people like to pay attention to the most. Just how fast is a skill position player? Well, here you go. J.J. Nelson of UAB, that's right, UAB, a program that doesn't exist, with a 4.28. And then, of course, a 4.33 from Dorset. Then you got Chris Conley of Georgia. Kevin White, huge guy, unbelievable speed. And then Lockett, of course, you got Amari Cooper of Alabama, who ran extremely well, and he's huge also. White's a guy that's jumping out of sight in terms of accelerating where he's at, potentially in the draft. Maybe a top 10 guy now. And the Saints, no doubt, like him, but could they afford to look at a wide receiver in the first round? Brian, I would say probably not, although I think the Saints have a lot of needs, and wide receiver might be one of them when you think about it, because you got Cooks, you got Stills, who's okay, you got an aging Colston. Realistically, that position is nowhere near where it used to be.
I agree, and that's an area that they're going to address at some point, either be free agency or in the draft. And Kevin White, West Virginia, did improve himself at the Combine. I'm probably like everybody on this panel. You know, there's so many elements to the Combine. It's not just physical qualities. It's not strength, running, and everything like that. We found out over the weekend that Jameis Winston has a little bit of a tear or something in his shoulder. He proved the critics wrong. He proved the naysayers wrong. He went out, through well at his Combine workout, as Mariota did. But you get to know, you get to inside a little bit, you talk to these prospects, you get a better feel. It's just that we're at the very beginning stage with all of these guys, and Ricky knows this, film doesn't lie. So we'll see.
All right, more on Winston and Mariota coming up in the next segment. Let's take a look at some linebacker times in the 40, because here's where you start to figure out guys who can really chase. And this is a position that Ricky loves. Therefore, let's get his take on this. You look at Beasley running the top time. Look at Quan Alexander of LSU, who ran extremely well. And then you got the others bringing up the rear. But a 4.55 time for Alexander figures to help him. Ricky, how important is it for an outside backer to have speed?
I mean, it's great because he can make up when a guy hit the corner. He can go catch him, before he get around that corner. So it makes a lot. When I look at the guy from Florida, Fowler, I mean, he the slowest one on there, and I think he the best one on there. So speed don't always tell. I mean, because my thing, if I'm already on the outside, how can a guy get around me? I mean, So it's just playing football from there. And that's when I look at some of those guys, the speed guys, but not football players. And some of them football players, but not speed guys.
Well, Fowler could go as high as number 2 in the draft. He's that good, and he's the lowest on that list we have, but that was the top 5, not the whole list. He ran extremely well. Keep that in mind. So when we're talking about defense, let's take a look at defensive ends, another position that the Saints might possibly look at, especially with who knows what's going to happen with Gillette, who stands up or puts a hand down. Right. Here are the 40-yard dash times of defenders, and look who's on top. Danielle Hunter of LSU, freakish athlete, can really run. And then, of course, you look at the rest of those times, all very impressive. And Amy, again, speed of defensive end is great, in particular if you got that first step, because that first step means everything for a defensive end in terms of rushing the passer.
It absolutely does, and considering where the Saints are now, I personally think that I would address what their problems are in the secondary and then go in terms of the line or defensive end on the second pick. That would be the order I would go in. I think that while we have talked about what Keenan Lewis has done, I think that you've got to balance with a strong starting cornerback on the other side to balance him. So looking at that list, though, I mean, impressive list, no doubt. But if it was me, especially with the Saints looking at it, I would go cornerback first round.
Well, speaking of that, you look at a guy like Jalen Collins of LSU. He had a big day today, ran unbelievably, and he's really helped his stock in the process. So that's a guy to keep an eye on. But Brian, bottom line is the Saints, in my mind, they need a defensive tackle. They need a cornerback badly. They might need a guard. They might need a tackle. They need a wide receiver, I think. If they lose Ingram, they need a running back. They have so many needs. This, to me, more than any other year illustrates they've got to take the best player on the board rather than targeting a position.
I agree with you, Kenny, and you stole the words right out of my mouth. But look, don't dismiss. We've got Trader Mick, and I know he likes to move back as opposed to move forward. But don't be surprised if the guy is there, and I think he would be on offense or that wide receiver. Okay, on defense or that wide receiver. But in regards to what Amy said, I agree with the cornerback. But look, if you get a good pass rusher, Ricky knows this, good pass rusher can help that secondary, okay? If you get to that quarterback and put pressure on him, that makes your DBs not have to work as hard.
I'll tell you, just looking at the Saints need some offensive linemen to protect Drew Brees. You're going nowhere. You can get all over position, and Drew Brees not protected. He's not a running quarterback, so he can't get out the way a whole lot. So you need to get some guys up front, 2 good guards and 2 good tackles, protect Drew Brees. If you don't do that, you starting off backward.
Yeah, they need a center, though, too. So
yeah, right.
They've got so many needs. It makes my point. They just have to have a good draft, unlike last year's. We'll take a timeout here. And, of course, when we return, we're going to talk about who you go with first in the draft. But first, our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening. It's another good one. And I was pondering it earlier. The Saints had 6 players on their 2014 roster whose dads were either NFL coaches or players. What 3 Saints are sons of former Pro Bowl players? 3. You think you can get 1, 2, all 3? We're going to let you know when we return. Our hot seat segment next on the NFL Draft when Sports NOLA TV continues.